everybody, thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today I'll be looking at a debut graphic novel, and it's a hell of a debut. This is Wild or So I Was Born to Be Volume 1 by Cristian Castelo. It's out from Oni Press. It's a really big book. I'm not quite sure why they printed it so big, because this seems very much in the YA, like older young adults, but it seems like in that genre. So they're used to like the tankobon size, and you'll see this is quite a bit bigger than that. So there's the Club 9 tankobon. Here's a regular American size comic, and this book, which is just a really big book. I dig that. It just seems like a strange marketing choice to me. It's definitely going to stand out off of shelves, but with that cover and the size, hopefully that will get it the attention it deserves, because it's a great book. So out from Oni, you can see right away on this opening, just like title spread here, you get a sense of the art in the book, and the art's gorgeous. The cartooning and the line work is absolutely off the chain. There's a limited color palette throughout the book. I don't think it's spot colors. I'm not sure. It could be like this yellowy orangey color and the red, and then the color that they're using in place of black, I'm not sure, because there's a range of colors represented throughout. But it's a really cool look, or I should say it's a really hot look. It's a really warm look, but it's a really nice look. I like it. The only problem I have is that this is about a 200-page book. Yeah, 200, almost exactly 200 pages. And by the end of the book, there's no variation in the color, and that heat got a little tiring. Like, I was kind of visually hot by the end of the book. If there would have been like some sequences where you're going into a dream or you're going into a memory or something like that, and the colors would have switched up just to have a little bit of break over the 200 pages, that would have been nice. And this is volume 1, so I'm assuming I hope that there's gonna be a volume 2, because it's a really good book. And I'm assuming that's going to continue, and that could be over 400 or 600 pages or however long. Could be a lot of heat. But it's a really cool look, and put on top of just, you can see already the astonishing drawing that Cristian Castelo is doing. It's a really, it's hard to imagine that this is a debut book. It's very sophisticated. So the story is set in summer of 1975, at least that's what we're starting, and we have the main character here, who I believe her name is Wild, but it takes a while for that to come into play. I think that's actually her name is Wild, but it's Wild and her kind of reluctant, negligent dad in the car driving back to drop her off at her mom's. And there's some really like great writing in this book as well. Like right here, she's talking about coming in and living with him, and he says, when you're in college, you can live wherever you want. Deal aside, with how things are going with the band, her dad's band, I just wouldn't have time for, and she says, me? And he says, exactly. And then it's like, no, not exactly. What I'm saying is the band is finally making it, and I just really need to focus on that right now. You got to understand, we're on the verge of a career breakthrough. And she's like, I'm 14, Dad. Come on. And then they get into this like fight, and he turns into this demon character. And at that point, you start to realize that this is a dream, and like, you know, things get a little too strange, a little too wild. And here, as they're falling off the cliff, they shout "Wild," which I believe is her name for the first time. And then you hear like some of the panels like this can be a little bit confusing. This is my only complaint. The transitions, and that could have been handled by color, this being all in cools and this being in warms and a transition color or something like that. That's a little bit confusing. So I believe what's happening is her mom in the waking world is shouting her name Wild, and then that wakes her up. But like right here, you get the sense that she's screaming, but you don't know what she said, and it's just like not clear what's happening. There's this thing on her face, and then it's like coming off, and then it flies across the room and hits her mom in the face, or her mom has thrown it at her, and then she threw it back at her mom, and then the doll lands here. So there's some sequences where the storytelling gets a little confused, and for me, a part of that was because of the limited color palette, and because the characters will sometimes share similar features, like her and her mom. They both have the shirt that's in the same color. The mom obviously has glasses, but sometimes the glasses are being colored, sometimes they're not. The mom has looks like earrings on in this panel, but then they're not there in this panel, and they both have the same little shine in their hair. So I got really confused on this page for a second, and then I glommed onto, oh, she's got the ASU shirt. She doesn't, but her hands are in the way, so I can't see it. And then Mom's got glasses, and I can see the glasses there, even though they're not colored in. So there's a couple moments like that in the book, but mostly the story flows really well. There's just some strange choices, like, wait, no, don't look, focus on me, and then we're looking at a poster, and it takes a second to realize the poster. So there's a lot of things that are like paid off in the next panel instead of set up in the previous panel, and that's sometimes leaves me a little confused. Sometimes it's totally fine. But anyways, this is Wild and her mom. Her mom obviously used to take part in roller derby, or it was at least a fan of it. And now Wild has gone in and taken all of her mom's roller derby stuff and is celebrating. And her mom doesn't want her to get involved. And that's pretty much the core of the story, is Wild getting involved in roller derby, being part of her school's roller derby team, and then going into competition. So if you want like a quick summary of the book, that's what it is. But it's hard to even call Wild the main character, because she'll just disappear from the story for long chunks of time as you get to know the other roller derby characters, and it really becomes like an ensemble, which I quite like. So you start meeting the other roller derby people pretty early on in the book. Wild is going to a high school that's known for training like they have a crazy roller derby program at the high school or something like that. And so there's just all of these roller derby teams there, and it's like this brutal training ground that she's going to. So the first one you meet is Colt Catastrophe, and you have them all in their costumes. This is Westhoff High School. This is where Westhoff High School. This is where they're all at. That has this roller derby team thing going on in their sports program, I guess. One thing that depending on where I'm at in the book, depending on what's going on, that I both really, really like the first time I noticed it here, I really liked it, and other spots, which I'll point out, I don't like, is that Cristian Castelo will play with scale for emotional emphasis. It's not quite like hierarchical scale like you'd see in hieroglyphics or something, but as characters get more imposing in the story, they get bigger. And so you see here, this character just gets really, really big all of a sudden, even though she's supposed to be like a normal-sized teenager. So I like that from a communication standpoint. From a storytelling standpoint, though, there's a couple spots where just as other things are getting in the way and getting wild, that gets a little wild as well. But it does lead to a lot of really fun images like this. And again, I think any given illustration in here is just, I mean, phenomenal. The line work is gorgeous. I'd seen Cristian Castelo in one of those anthologies that I reviewed, one of the tinfoil comics, working over top of someone else, and I had gone to the Instagram entirely because the quality of the line, like whoever had done the original drawing wasn't that great in terms of anatomy and stuff, but the quality of the line work was so good I had to follow up. And then when I went to Cristian Castelo's site and saw it, like his structure, his proportions underneath, I was like, oh yeah, this artist is great. But that line quality that he's got is really, really just sexy, phenomenal stuff. A lot of the other notes that I made in the book were just little bits of writing or little bits of imagery that I liked. Like I said, there's this big ensemble cast in all of these competitions with these different roller derby teams, and just buy the book and get into those. It's a really good book. It's well worth it. But some of these other moments to kind of prove why I like the book, I really like this scene right here where the coach is saying, your sister was my star athlete. It's because of her that we made it to the playoffs in '72. Why didn't you lead with that? I would have admitted you instantly. So she's saying, like, if you want on the team, just tell me, like, your family history. And the girl here just says, I was trying to avoid that situation specifically. I'd rather be admitted to the team for my own achievements and not my sister. So tell me, what's it going to take? Push-ups, pull-ups, I can do it all. And I just like that ethic. I like that. Like, I don't want any favors. I don't want, because of my associations or whatever category you're putting me in or who I'm related to. Like, I want to earn things on my own. I think that's a really healthy outlook on life. And like, she's being handed basically a spot on the team because the team just needs people. They're desperate for people. And it's like, oh yeah, you're all on the team, and she wants to earn it. And I think that's admirable. Like, someone's offering you a job and you're like, no, put me through the test first, coach. That's great. Once they get to the roller derby stuff, you get some of this really awesome dynamic artwork here that's just capturing the action. And so this gives me a bit of a sense of like a manga where you're constantly leveling up to a bigger and bigger boss. And I have a feeling that's like the format of this, as that they go up in competition. And I think a lot of the storytelling is being derived from, or at least the structure of the story is being derived from sports manga. And it has that feeling of like there's always going to be a bigger, better, badder boss. Another book this is reminding me of quite a bit, and one that there will be a video for probably a couple days after this one, a week or so after this one, is Bastien Vivez's Last Man, which is getting re-released through Skybound at Image. It had been put out through, I think, Ablaze had done the first 6, and it's more like a wrestling fight comic, but everyone has the cool kind of wild manga costumes like this, but it's more of a stripped down, cartoony, more Western, less manga looking style in that book. And the same thing's happening in here. There's almost more like a Paul Pope aesthetic to some of the designs, and to some of the line work's a lot cleaner. You don't get any of that dry brush, but there is some kind of Paul Pope-ness to it still, I think. So you get that combination of like this sports manga or Fist of the North Star type structure where there's always a bigger boss, but then in just a slightly different look than you're used to. I really like how abstract a lot of the compositions get too. It's like these puzzle pieces of shapes and stuff. In places, again, compositionally, I think that works really well. There's a couple of other times where I think, if there was more color available, or if the color were being used a little bit more to just like block out silhouettes, the images might feel a little bit less puzzly, and they might be like a little snappier to understand. But most of the time, they're perfectly legible images. Some like this, that gets a little cluttered looking to me. I understand what's going on, but I'm also like, my first interpretation of this, the first way I process it is just shapes and colors, and then I resolve them into image. Whereas these, I resolve them as an image first, and then I can process the effectiveness of the shapes and colors and the composition, or like this, where the silhouette's working really well. But there's other ones, it's effective, beautiful to look at, just a little harder to interpret. There's some, talking about the cartooning, there's some really great moments of exaggeration, like this right here. I absolutely love that. She's getting squeezed there by her coach, and the way her face distorts, I just think is great cartooning. And then you start to bring in, so that's the end of part 1. And I don't know if this came out separately, or if this isn't intended to be 2 separate volumes and they've decided to stuff them together or whatever, but that's the end of part 1. And then you get part 2, where you really just get kind of introduced to, like I said, a new set of characters, which are these 8-ball, I don't know what the name of that team is, but you're kind of getting introduced to her elsewhere. But this character here takes up, I forget her, Dixie. Dixie takes up a majority of the story in the second part, like Dixie's combat with someone else. In the second part, you get this character here, who speaks Spanish. I don't know her name. A lot of the times, the names, they don't give you the name of the character right out the gate necessarily, and then so I'm having a harder time attaching names. Like Wild, the first time it said Wild, I just assumed they were saying Wild because they were careening over a cliff, and they're like, "This is Wild. I'm having this weird dream." So names were a little hard for me. But she keeps accusing Wild of being a pocha, I believe, pocha, which I'm assuming from context is like a derogatory term for someone who's of Hispanic or Mexican descent, but it like doesn't know how to speak the language, or is like too white. It's like my friends, my 2 best friends in high school were Chinese, and they used the term Twinkie to describe someone who was like yellow on the outside and white on the inside. I'm assuming that's like super inappropriate now, but that's like the term that they used back then to describe someone who was like pretty Americanized, but of Asian descent, mostly applying it to themselves. I have a feeling this word here is the same thing. It's someone of Mexican descent who's very Americanized, and this character here is kind of seeing her as like a race traitor or a ethnic traitor, and she's saying an agent of the Aryan masquerading in the skin of my people, a deplorable act worthy of severe punishment. So this character is like a really really harsh, unlikable character with a really kind of toxic worldview, I think, but they're being painted as the bad guy as well. You know, like she's giving this girl a lot of grief for being raised in, like, speaking the language of the country she was raised in, and at some point she even says like, my parents never taught me Spanish, and it's, you know, it's like, well, you could have learned it. So I like that they're casting that as the bad guy, this like over allegiance to something so stupid as like where your family came from. You know, it's like my family came from Germany and Russia historically, but that doesn't mean I have to have any allegiance to Germany or Russia or even Jewishness, really. I mean, I have a mild interest in some Jewish culture, but not being bound by those things is a good message, I think. And then really, here's some more. I really like this cartooning here of like the fist starting to hit the nose and all the hands breaking. Obviously, the physics of that. You're either saying that she has a really tough nose, which is implied, where she says like, "What the fuck are you? Like, I broke my hand just hitting your nose." But also, like, just from a storytelling standpoint, it's okay that the hit hasn't fully landed yet. Like, the fist hasn't fully hit the face, but you're getting this broken bone, and I like that visual quite a bit. But now there's kind of a battle going on between the original bad guys, which were the Chaos Club or whatever they were at the beginning there, and then this new like 8-ball team that's led by this character Dixie. So now there's like 4 teams in play, and then they're going to a competition where four teams are in play, and that where I got most confused in the book. Here's a really interesting and kind of clever transition where Dixie's talking to her grandma, and they're getting in an argument, and while they're arguing, up above you get like this little inset that's like of Dixie's face from the front, and then you have this almost like, look, at first I took it as a word balloon, and then you realize it's her eye with her grandmother being reflected in it, and in the iris of the eye you're getting a reflection of this frame and this statue, and then that shows up twisted here, which I think is strange because the character's not looking at twisted. It just looks like, well, this is how the best way I'm going to fit it in. You know, I would have just recomposed this somehow. So it took me a second, but once I figured out what was going on here, I thought that was really, really tricky. Maybe this would have worked better if this was like white, or if there hadn't have been the red here. I think that in certain instances like this, the limited color palette causes problems with reading, or just what color choices have been used. But then this scene is really, really emotionally intense. This Tony the Tiger looking thing, yeah, Tony the Tiger jar there, has her grandfather's ashes in it, and she's basically just trying to get the keys to her car, and her grandma's taking them away from her. And it's like, if you don't give me the keys, I'm gonna spill grandpa all over. And just like that moment there shows what a nasty, foul character she is. And I think Cristian Castelo is really good at that, like making you either care about the characters or dislike the characters quite a bit. So I think that scene is compelling for a lot of reasons. It's a little weird, but it's an interesting trick that could be used. Here you have this character again, the one with the eye patch, who's coming in, and she's spouting some more of her racist nonsense. She says, "Fool, every bit of English you make this disgusting plaque-ridden tongue speak is an implied rejection. A rejection of our history, our heritage, a refusal to participate is a clear indication of where your allegiances lie, you traitorous scum." So I just think like that's good writing, you know, like she's saying some crazy stuff there that makes you dislike her. And then here she goes on to explain, like, you know, like, my parents just never taught me, okay? And then she says, "Do mommy and daddy still wipe your ass too? Because you could have made some effort to get to know your culture by now." And so there's a battle between Wild and this team, And then at the same time, there's a battle going on between the Crazy 8 team and oh no, this team and Wild's team, and then the Crazy 8 team is battling this dog team here, and then the original bad guy team gets involved at some point. I got a little confused during this. It almost seems like there was two roller derby matches going on at once or something. I'm not sure, but there's these really disgusting like puppy play dog costumes, which I mean, it's just gross to me, but that's fine. They're supposed to be unlikable. And here you get this emotional scale thing is getting a little bit wild. This is one of those scenes where I was talking about where the emotional scale, like the hand getting bigger and the dog getting bigger, this extreme foreshortening, but then like the dog character and they're super small, or like here the characters are changing sizes, shrinking and growing quite a bit during an already complex scene with a lot of different characters and running around a roller derby and switching teams and stuff. Then that emotional scale stuff got a little much for me, but again, generally I like the trick. And then I really enjoyed this down here. You got these two guys who have been observing this event, and this character here is not particularly excited about it. And his buddy says, see, no, wasn't that exciting? And he says, turtles fucking is more exciting than this, Clark. And that cracked me up because I've been to a live roller derby event and I was bored to tears out of my mind. It's just like women on roller skates going in circles, and there's some game being played, but I had no idea. It's just like trying to be up front, I think. Like the longer you're up front, the better you're doing. I had people explain the rules to me and it never stuck. And I do think that this book could benefit. Like I'm thinking of Battle Angel Alita, where they have kind of the extreme roller derby with some violence in it, like this, where you can actually attack people a little bit more, and that had like the rules explained in it. And I don't think roller derby is like such a common thing like baseball or basketball or something, where you have a general sense of what the goal is. You get the ball in the hoop, get it over the line, run around the base. Like I don't think it's that popular. So I think an explanation of what roller derby is and what the rules are would have been helpful at some point in this, but it's more about the characters, so it doesn't matter too much. Here's another really funny moment of cartooning. Again, it took me a little bit of a second to figure out, but right here she's got like this thing growing off of her head. It's just because there's this motion line on it that I didn't see it just as a big bubble. I saw it as like a tube, but it's really just a big hematoma on her head that they're freaking out about, and she just breathes it in and plop, and that's really funny. I've seen some terrible hematomas in fights, and it just the to see a fighter do that, suck in a hematoma, would be hilarious. Here's some more of this pup play team. I just find them to be gross. And then when they finally get beat, he's really excited that Dixie beat him, and is like or I guess she's really excited. You're really marvelous. You're really the champion. Please go on and really give it to me. And so there's like the sickness, the BDSM sickness that's implied with the pup play in that character. And I find that gross. And so does Dixie. And then here at the end, we just have another panel that I thought was really funny, where this character just says, yeah, if I wanted to see two chicks crying, I'd just cheat on my wife with her sister again. That's such a crazy line of dialogue. So there's really a lot to enjoy. And like I said, this is 200 pages of just really phenomenal high level cartooning, high level design and composition. There's a few things here and there with the storytelling where it wasn't as clear as it could be, but I'd just go back a panel or two and I'd figure it out. And then structurally, the way the story is structured, the way there's like an ensemble cast, these really great lines of dialogue, these characters that I can really like or really hate, I think there's a lot going on in this book. And I assume is that it plays out longer. I'll just get more and more invested in all of the characters. So I'm really excited about this series. I'm really looking forward to the second volume. Who knows when it'll come out? This is a lot of work already just to get these 200 pages. but I look forward to it. So definitely go out and get yourself a copy of this book, support this project so it keeps going. I think this is a really great piece. I mean, here where you don't get the color, you can see some of the beauty of Cristian Castelo's artwork, his ink work. So phenomenal artist, really great writer, good product. I just can't imagine this being a debut book. It's so well done. So this is great stuff. Go get it. If you appreciate what we're doing here on the channel and you want to support us, the best ways to do that are through our Patreon. There's a couple different tiers there with some different voting rights and prizes and stuff that you can win. That money helps us buy the books that we're reviewing. And then most importantly is supporting Sean with the books that he's publishing through Living the Line. So we'll take a look at a couple of those now. Centralia is an awesome, gorgeous comic by rising Dutch star Miel van de Peet. This is his first work. It's a really great sci-fi story. There's a world in the future where the sun has gotten so hot that people can't be on the ground. So they have to run around. There's a lot of conceits that go with that. You know, what is the world that looks like? And I think you can see by the art that Sean's description of this book as like a Moebius for young adults, a YA Moebius, is a really great description of this really gorgeous and like wild, wacky, fun book. The Exile by Eric Creek is a gorgeously illustrated Viking saga of revenge. Eric Creek calls it his Viking Western. It's about a guy who's been away on the warpath and is returning home to some family troubles that have to be resolved. And this is told in just this amazing, like, kind of 3-color art style that looks like old woodblock cuts or something. It's absolutely gorgeous book that you've got to pick up. Thanks for following along. Take it away, Jack.
You want to see all these books? Smash that subscribe button and the like button and the bell, and then you get them.